uh, we'll go ahead and get started. And there's a few preliminary things to begin with. So it maybe somebody jumps in late, they won't really miss the core part of the presentation. But first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming and welcome you to our Zoom meeting. This is part of what Outdoor Pursuits has started called Inspire by the Fire. And this is an informational meeting in nature, and it's free and everything. But some of the other events, Inspire by the Fire sessions, are going to be more, type educational learning type things. Some may require a fee, but, you'll be able to learn skills about, not only cycling, but, with kayaking and hiking and backcountry cooking and all sorts of things like that. So I encourage you to watch the Outdoor Pursuits website and calendar, for those as they come up, because I think there's it's amazing just just even here locally in Columbus, just the quality of the presenters and the expertise that people just want to share with us. And so I'd encourage you to look into that. And just by way of introduction, my name is Jeff Piron, and I'm the director of GOBA, and very very proud to be in that role. And this will be my third year, but hopefully second GOBA. Everything got thrown out of whack a little bit from last year's cancellation, but we're trying to be optimistic about this year despite all the challenges. And just I guess a couple of housekeeping notes. Matt, if you're able to turn off the microphones except for the Lisa and Jerry and myself, then that'll probably save us a lot of the background noises from barking dogs and such. And then, but there is a chat function that if you have questions, you can type them out there, and then Matt will be looking at that chat screen, and pulling out some questions that when we get to the Q&A portion, he'll share those. And then also when we get to the Q&A portion, you can ask questions, live just by raising your hand. There's a Zoom, function to do that, and Matt can call on you and unmute you. And then basically, I want to have Jerry Rampelt, who's kind of the co-presenter, and introduce himself, and also Lisa Darris, and introduce herself. And then Lisa's going to tell us about a couple of things that Outdoor Pursuits has planned that I think are pretty exciting, particularly for cyclists. And so Jerry, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody who you are.
Hey, thank you, Jeff. I'm Jerry Rampelt. I'm president of the board of Columbus Outdoor Pursuits. Been vice president and also treasurer of the board. And some of you GOBA riders remember that in 2017, I was the interim director of GOBA. Julie Van Winkle had retired several years before, and then Bill Gordon died a week before the 2016 GOBA, a week before, while on a bicycle ride with some friends. And Julie came back, and then in January she said, "Hey, can you do it for this year, and I'll help you out?" And she was a great help. This is just a little background. My first GOBA was 1991. And then in 1992, my wife and I and our new blended family honeymooned on GOBA. And in 2017, we celebrated our 25th anniversary, our silver anniversary on GOBA. Anyway, back to you, Jeff.
Okay. And Lisa, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Lisa Darris, and I am the TOSRV director, and I'm also the executive director of the organization. I helped out as the assistant director of GOBA last year, and I've been with the organization going back to 2016 when I came on board to help with the kayaking program. Jeff, do you want me to talk about the cycling tours this
Yeah,
year.
want to go ahead and, yeah, segue into that.
Yeah, so we have an exciting season coming up of cycling tours. Many of you probably recognize the names of these types of tours. Top of Ohio 100, there's Woodstock, there's oh gosh, Ride the Derby, Spot. All of these rides are used by many people, mostly toss, serve, and GOBA riders, to train up so that when the event actually happens, when GOBA comes along, it's not the first time you've ridden 30, 40, 50 miles or more. They start in April, and they'll be available. They're actually available now. I'll put the registration in the chat. There's 10 rides, and if you're a member of the organization, it's $50. And this year we're doing something pretty cool with Ride with GPS, where we're going to create leaderboards for the rides. So you know, if you ride all the rides, there's a good chance you'll see your name up there at the top, near the top, for all 10 rides. Most people kind of pick and choose, depending on schedules, which rides they're going to do. They're also going to be available individually too, so you can also participate in that manner as well. So we're excited. I'll put the registration, like I said, in the chat. Another quick update on tours that we're doing this year is we're doing shorter tours of maybe 7 to 12 miles, and they're themed bicycle tours. So for example, we started these last year, and for example, last year we did a Green Lawn Cemetery tour for those of you who want to or like to learn about the history of Columbus. It's a great tour for that. We also did a tour of the downtown Columbus parks. So we went to places like Scioto Audubon. We went to a little, it's called a pocket park called Fetch Park in German Village. We cycled through Franklin Park Conservatory, and we stopped at a few other places along the way. This year, we're going to continue to do those, and we're going to add a lot of other themed cycling tours to introduce people. They're short tours. Some of you on the phone or on the meeting today will probably be like, oh my gosh, 10 miles. I could do 10 miles with my eyes closed. But there are people out there who that's where they start. And they start with maybe a short ride, and they come to us through that pathway, and then sooner or later they're riding GOBA. So we're excited to present those this year as well. So look on our Facebook page, look on our website as we firm those up and schedule those throughout the season as well.
Okay, great. And again, thank you all for joining us. And tonight our primary focus is going to be GOBA, which is, you know, one of our most cherished and really one of our most complex events to put together. But a lot of the things we're looking at, the types of questions and challenges, are ones that face all multi-day tours, including, you know, our events like toss, serve, and Zoba, as well as really tours across the nation. And you know, we try to keep track of those and find out, you know, what everybody's doing, and particularly, you know, with regard to COVID and with regard to scheduling and like us, you know, with GOBA, a lot of them are just really kind of in that a little bit in that wait and see mode, and a few, you know, early ones, you know, have either canceled or postponed. So just kind of as an overview, I would say I really wouldn't expect too many multi-day tours, you know, anytime before the end of April, and then not really sure so much about the May tours. And then June, you know, we're hopefully starting to get to a point where the world is getting a little more back to normal, but yeah, even that's a bit on the bubble. And of course, with COVID, it's really nearly all aspects of life. The effect of the impact of COVID has been profound, and the toll has just been horrific. And we've had more than 357,000 deaths in the United States, and 1 million new cases just in the past 4 days alone. And but as dark as the situation is now, I guess one thing we've learned from COVID is how quickly things can change, and how quickly the COVID came upon us and the surges came upon us, and it's our hope that if we keep doing the things we're supposed to do, that we'll get an unsurge, and that's kind of a dramatic change for the better as we try to plan for the future amid all the uncertainty we face now. And of course, so much of this depends on the vaccines and how quickly they can be produced and distributed, and society's willingness to receive the shots, and so that's something we at Outdoor Pursuits and the other bike tour operators are really watching closely. That's just to see how that's going, and in the months ahead, just whether we're I think we're off to a little bit of slow start on the vaccinations, but hopefully that'll pick up, and then the supply will get new vaccines that will get approval and kind of get into that supply flow. So we're trying to be cautiously optimistic in that regard, but that's really going to be critical for bike tours and really everything that we do. And so it's kind of besides the vaccine, though, I mean it's still a matter of the basics that hopefully we've been learned to do throughout this, and to continue to mask up and stay socially distant and wash our hands, and then also realize too that even vaccinated people might be able to spread the virus. The science is still a bit unclear on that, and but so it's against this kind of uncertain backdrop that Outdoor Pursuits is trying to plan GOBA, and and basically just kind of keeping our options open, as far as how we do it. It may be that we can do it on a smaller scale, and there may be other approaches to it, but the key is for the cyclists to be able to participate in any bike tour we offer, and you can be sure that the safety of the participants and the volunteers, the staff, and the communities that we visit is our utmost priority, and it's going to drive all our decision making. And and it's one of those things we don't want to be known as the COVID tour, where we go into a small town and with infected riders, and all of a sudden there's an outbreak because of us, or riders on the tour go somewhere and everybody gets sick, and we just can't let that happen. And so of course the decisions about whether we can have events aren't just ours alone, and we've got state and local health departments and governments that are issuing emergency orders that prohibit public mass gatherings of more than 10 people in most cases, and that's still in effect here in Ohio. And those mass gatherings, that includes things like festivals, which GOBA is kind of viewed as a festival because of our camps where we're in fairgrounds and parks and things. And so we're going to be consulting very closely with those health departments as they determine whether GOBA is allowed, and we'll be trying to get insight from them as far as like what the thresholds are, what we have to see, what improvement we have to see in society before those restrictions start being eased. And but even if things go really well, it's going to be a matter of the rules are still going to be pretty strict. And for us, one of the key areas is temporary campgrounds, and the state has issued some rules on how temporary campgrounds work, and one of the things that a particular impact to us is like the spacing that you now have to have between sites and tents. Uh, Typically GOBA, we mark out sites that are about 1,000 square feet or have to be at least 1,000 square feet. And you can get 3 tent, riders can get 3 tents on there. And the way the rules are now, essentially you can only do 1 tent, per 1,000 square feet. So it would take, in effect, 3 times as much space as normal, to accommodate, the same number of people. So that's one of those things that we hope, if rules get eased on that to maybe it's, 2 tents, per 1,000 square feet or something that, will, won't leave us quite as spread out. But again, it's part of it too is there's nothing to say, even if the state allows that we may still want to go, with a stricter, stricter protocol, just, in the interest of making sure everybody feels safe and comfortable. And then you've got things like just, within the camps, you're going to have greater distancing, for just about all aspects of it, and more signage and increased sanitation, and all these things are required under the emergency orders for campgrounds. And one of the things about cycling is that when you're riding a bike, out on a roadway, the risks are generally, they're comparatively low. If you're distancing as you ride and wearing a mask and doing maybe not stopping at places, or if you do, you're masking up if you're stepping inside a gas station or something to use the bathroom or buy a candy bar. But for us, again, the real challenge is the kind of activities that are typical when you're off the bike, in a bike tour, and the things like the eating, the camping, using the restrooms, showering, riding in SAG vehicles and buses, attending like entertainment, and receiving first aid, just socializing among each other, all those sorts of things, are areas where I think even if we're able to have GOBA, we're going to have to just be very careful about, trying to mitigate, those types of situations. And so I guess it leads to the question, so what lies ahead, for GOBA and the other tours, and can vaccines save the day, and how soon, and how much longer are we going to have these requirements for mask and social distancing and enhanced sanitizing? And with some of this, a lot of people, some people are saying that possibly until the end of 2021 with the mask and the distancing and stuff, because again, the people who have been vaccinated, apparently they can still spread the virus, but the extent to which they can do that is not clear. And so it's going to be one of those things, I think, the science is just going to evolve on it, and the rules will change, to reflect that. And then of course there's the question, I guess, for you guys, and that's just how willing are riders willing to ride, in these type of tours, and how willing are towns, to host us. And so those are all things that, are really, come into play in determining whether or not, we can go forward with this, in addition to what the state is telling us, we can and cannot do. And so as we go through this, GOBA is looking at, just basically kind of approaching it from the standpoint of that all the rules are going to be strict. And so if we are to put on, a bike tour, how can we mitigate the risk? And, how can we, do things that would fall, within those rules? And so part of what we're doing is we're looking at I guess you would say, quote unquote, best practices. And these are things that, have emerged during the pandemic, and lessons that we can learn from, not just, from like other bicycling events, but other types of events and various businesses and restaurants. And just, one thing about, I guess, American ingenuity is, through this pandemic, there have been, just lots of ideas, that restaurants and others, have come up with in order to, to keep us safe, and so those are things that, we look at, and for example, like schools and churches and restaurants have developed a lot of safe practices while they continue to serve food. And, you've had churches that were able to still do like, fish fries during Lent, but, it would be like on a to-go basis. And then school lunch programs, there's one in particular, like here in Central Ohio, where what they would do, during the spring, when the schools were closed, but they still had to feed, children their school lunches, they would set it up. They would prepare the food, in the cafeteria, but then have tables set up outdoors, and you would have like a sack lunch, and say there would be some variety. Say one might be a turkey sandwich, and another sack might be, a roast beef sandwich or something like that. And they would bring those sacks out, on trays, and set the trays down on a table, outdoors, outside the lunchroom. And then people would come up one by one, to pick up the lunches, for their kids. And then, they could choose whatever type it is they wanted. And then the school employees, they would just keep, restocking the table, with new sacks of food. And so those are the kind of examples, that we can learn from, like in setting up a food stop, and so the things that our communities, have, in dealing with COVID for the past 9 months, they've been, having to do those sorts of things, to keep schools and things running. So yeah, we can learn a lot from them. And then for another example, in Versailles, one of the towns we're going to, their big thing is the Poultry Days Festival. Well, they had to cancel the festival, but it was still, I guess they were able to have a moneymaker off of it. And in that, what they did is the chicken dinners, that they serve, they just made them to go. I guess they served them just, in the styrofoam, containers, and people picked them up, to go. And so, they were still able to, they weren't able to have the full-fledged festival, but, they were still able to give people something, that, an event, and so that's, like I say, there'll be a host camp for us. So they learned a lot of lessons from doing that, as to how they can safely feed us, when we're in camp there. And, but, and two, with food service along the routes in particular, I guess the reality is that, we would be eating a lot of prepackaged items. I mean, because that's really the safe way to serve things, the prepackaged, pastries and that sort of thing. And then also too, is we might have to rely more like on convenience stores and restaurants and things in towns, like for food stops along the routes. If there aren't community groups that are, can't be found, that can't be found to operate a food stop. But we're fortunate in how the routes came together, in that area of the state. Generally, the places we're stopping, have have alternative kind of the FOYO, the food on your own opportunities. So that may become more of a, more of a staple for us. And then of course the other thing is one of many things is a big concern is how to provide, like enhanced cleaning of restrooms and portable toilets and showers and just the things in camp that that are could really be problematic as far as spreading the disease and so our companies, our vendors that provide that, have been pretty resourceful for, for ways to, like stepping up, the sanitizing of porta potties. And it's like under the state, the new state emergency order, they require porta potties and showers to be sanitized, twice a day, and then more frequently, and like if there's, in peak periods. And our shower truck company that's been with us for a long time, OK's Cascade, which really provides a great service. When we do those GOBA surveys, we get very, very few, almost no complaints about OK's Cascade, and they're just really super. And their primary business is providing like disaster relief. So if you have like a hurricane somewhere, they can come in and set up a small city, for the disaster workers. And so they've been dealing with that and events and things all along, through COVID. It's they haven't really paused with that. And for them, the showers, part of their protocols is spraying the shower stalls with a disinfectant, after each person uses them. And so it's one of those things where we may have to add a shower truck, if our numbers are smaller than normal, then we may have to keep the same number of shower trucks, just because it's going to be a little more time consuming getting the showers. And but hopefully, I think they've got it down to where they have somebody with a sprayer, and it's just a pretty quick process to disinfect those stalls. And but again, and what they've also had to adapt to is like outside the shower truck, where you have the sinks, and people shave, and where you have the sitting area where people kind of mostly dress and mostly undress, and those they're spreading those out a little bit more, to get the social distancing and definitely more control over the lines, to keep the lines orderly and and well spaced. And then, and there's aspects to, like, for instance, packet pickup, at the start of a tour. One of the things we're looking at is the possibility of, rather than having to come into a building to pick up your packet. Of course, some smaller events, I think, are looking at doing like, mailing out the packets, which, is an option. But another way to do it might be just to even to have like a drive-through packet pickup, where you drive, when you arrive at GOBA, you drive past a tent, and you hand in your waiver, and then you get your envelope, with stuffed with everything you need, and then you drive on through, and then that, eliminates having to go inside a building to do it. And like I say, our towns, are also a good source of lessons on how we can mitigate, risk and have events. And the host towns have done some small events during the past 9 months, and they're working on ways to hold festivals and fairs and things, for the upcoming year. So like Troy, for example, they have, the Strawberry Festival is one of their big events, and they're in the planning stages right now to try to have that. And also things like, the Tour de Donut. And so the lessons and things that they're learning, in researching, the most effective ways to and safest ways to have that, those are things that also can be applied to us, and what the town does, in terms of, entertaining and feeding people. Those, can carry over to an event like GOBA too. And but there's some risks that, just probably are going to be too great to overcome, even in the best of circumstances. And one of the worries are things like the indoor floor sleeping, in the gyms, and the risk that poses. And also things like shuttle buses, when you're busing people, off to attractions and things, and just how many people, you can put on a bus, either to go off to somewhere like the Air Force Museum, or just a shuttle downtown, to, for that day's, to hit the food places and all that. And fortunately, again, in our towns, we're pretty close to the downtown areas where it's an easy ride or an easy walk. So that kind of helps us a little bit if we can't have shuttle buses, in the towns. And And then two, some of the attractions we may like to visit, they may be closed or have, reduced, limits, on the number of visitors. So that may rule it out, as far as something that, we can offer, excursions to. And then at our facilities, like for instance, Wapakoneta High School, where they have cafeterias and other indoor spaces that we're kind of relying on, our access to those might be iffy. And so it's kind of along the lines, anything that's indoors or anything where people kind of have to crowd together, those are things that are going to be, at least iffy, and we'll just have to really think those through. And so I guess, all that, and I don't want to sound, too gloom and doom or anything like that, because like I think things, can change so fast that in a few months from now, it's everything's looking up again, and we're seeing a big light, at the end of the tunnel. So, but still, we have to decide, at some point, it's time to, what's the expression? You have to stop cutting bait and fish. And for us, we kind of have a timetable in looking at that. And what we want to do is later this month, and at a date to be announced here shortly, we're going to start the process of signing up the writers who received deferrals in 2020, and that who want to at least consider writing in 2021. And with that, there's no payment involved, because you've already got that in deferral. That's kind of your token for a free ride. But what we want to do is get you in the system and get your information updated and everything. And also that kind of gives us a clue too of like how many people are wanting to do it this year, because as we move along, we're hoping by early March that we might be able to start registering new riders. And of course, that'll depend on a lot of things. But if we do, that would be pretty limited at first, because our priority is to save, spots for people with the deferrals, and you all, already endured that. And, if you want to ride, this year, then you get first crack at it. And then also too, as I will get into later, you don't feel like you have to ride this year, because you can defer those deferrals on out to 2022 or 2023. But at least we want to, anybody who does want to ride, we want to make sure, they get in. And so from March on, presuming we can start taking paid registration, new paid registrations, that they will probably be small in number at first, and the hope being that we can gradually expand that number, if the COVID outlook improves. And it may be a situation where these riders will be like on a wait list, and if spots open up, then they would be sort of in that line to get in. But really what it comes down to is by mid-April, GOBA is going to have to decide whether to move forward with the tour, and or whether to cancel again. And so that's going to be, at that point we'll be 2 months out, from GOBA. And so hopefully that'll give us a clearer picture in us and the health officials, everybody involved, a clearer picture of just, how things are going to shape up, for late June. And for us, the mid-April is kind of a critical juncture, in that for some of the big expenditures, like, for the contracts, for shower trucks and luggage trucks and ambulances and porta potties and all that, if we're going to back out of those contracts, we need to do it by that time, or we start losing deposits, and other money. So that's kind of, again, where a critical time for us. And then also with the towns, and getting ready for us, they need as much certain notice, advance notice with certainty as they can get, because there's a lot of expenditures and things that they have to make, in order to host us. And so yeah, we can't really delay it too much, letting them know what we're going to do, because we don't want to put them in a bind and cause them unnecessary expense and work, preparing for something that, gets canceled at the last minute. So we don't want to do that to them. And then also you all too. I mean, it's not fair to keep you hanging if you want to make other plans, for that week in June. And so we want to give you a little certainty on, what we're doing. And but again, if we do get another cancellation to GOBA 2021, the writers who were deferred in 2020, we get another deferment, and any new writers who signed up would have the choice of a deferment or a full refund. And deferments, they're pretty well explained, and on goba.com. So I'd encourage you to go there and check out, how those work. And again, just to emphasize that one of the features of the deferment that probably many of you got in 2020 is they're kind of like this token, and they entitle the person that holds that token to a full registration in 2021, 2022, or 2023 at no additional cost. And even if the price of registration increases for new registrants, which I hate to say, but I think for us and a lot of bike tours, that's just kind of going to be the reality of things, because of, the extra expenses involved, with, all the mitigation for COVID. So really your deferral is kind of a valuable thing, because I think a lot of you, if you were early bird registrants, you got in at like $295. And I don't think you're going to see a $295 registration for GOBA again anytime in the next couple of years. That's my hunch. I'm not saying officially, but it doesn't look likely. And so really that's as far as GOBA, that's pretty much what I wanted to tell you about. Again, no major announcements, but again, just kind of the background information and just sort of a kind of a peek, into our thought process on it, and just, how we're approaching it. And we'll do our best, to keep you informed along the way as to, just how these things are shaping up. But a lot of it, will just be, on your own, just seeing, how the spread of COVID's going, how the vaccination's going, and what the health departments are saying, because, all that is going to be, basically reflected, in what we do and what other bicycle tours do. So we got to keep those fingers crossed and keep those hands washed, and, just do our best to work through this. And so what I wanted to do now was to kind of throw it open to Jerry and Lisa, if they wanted to say anything more about GOBA or any of the other outdoor pursuits events, and then after that we can kind of throw it open to questions, the ones that you guys posed on the chat, and then also, like I say, you can raise your hand on Zoom, and we can Matt can unmute your mic, and you can ask it that way. So Jerry and Lisa, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I just had a couple things. Jeff did all the work planning for GOBA for 2020, and then had to make some difficult decisions in March. Fortunately, all 4 towns that we had planned for this year's route would like to be on there again. So he didn't have to go out and find new towns, but he's going through the process again with the added COVID restrictions to replan it again this year. Tremendous amount of work, and really appreciate what he's done. Just a couple of facts. Many of you know this. Columbus Outdoor Pursuits is a 501c3 charity under the rules of the IRS. That means any contributions to Columbus Outdoor Pursuits is generally tax deductible. Always seek advice from your accountant before that, taking the tax deduction. The second thing is that for those of you who go way back, we split off from American Youth Hostels in the early 90s, but actually the local organization has been around 81 years. we get our funding from people who pay a fee to participate in an event. That's our revenue source. That's historically been a revenue source. We do get contributions. We do have some grant money, but that's a very small part of our budget. We do appreciate it. But we've been able to survive this. Jeff was on furlough for 5 months. Lisa was on furlough, and she's now back part-time, not full-time. So we've had to make cutbacks to be able to get us through this. Um, as Jeff mentioned, we can do all the things that we can possibly do to keep the ride safe and sanitary, but what we can't do is violate Ohio Department of Health policies and procedures. And so Jeff is on an advisory committee with the state of Ohio on this, and so he's been involved in these conversations for months now. Anyway, that's all that I have to say. Thank you, Jeff.
But, I'll just add in too, Jerry, and I don't want to be remiss about the host towns and just the wonderful role that they played. They were really disappointed that we weren't able to have GOBA in 2020, and so they were very eager to agree to host us in 2021. Same towns, same order, same sort of format, and hopefully the routes that we devised, for GOBA week can be pretty much used this year. There's always, construction projects and things like that, bridge replacements and things that, we have to account for. But yeah, those towns are most of them, all of them have had GOBAs before, and they love the event, and they love the people that it brings, and it's a nice shot in the arm, for their economies, and certainly all of them, need that at this point. And so yeah, and their willingness to work with us has just been incredibly understanding and helpful. One of the things that we kind of looked at early on, they say with June sort of being a little bit of uncertainty about how the COVID situation is going to be, we kind of looked at, well, could we push back GOBA? But kind of the intricacies of GOBA and scheduling kind of really made that impossible. But in order to keep those same towns, those same venues for the camps, and keep everything in the same order, because hopefully if we're having GOBA, that means places like Sydney, they're having their county fair at the fairgrounds, and Troy has other, festivals and things just about every weekend, at the park. And then Versailles has their Poultry Day festivals. Plus they use that park a lot for, they have like a national ultimate Frisbee, tournament, or ultimate disc tournament. And a place like Wapakoneta, where we're at a school, generally after about the 1st of August, those school buildings, start getting used, for other things, and teams start needing those fields. They want us to get our tents off the field so they can start practicing football and their other small fall sports. So yeah, it just wasn't feasible to move back the dates of GOBA, even though it could have helped us, get a little farther out, from the pandemic. But but yeah, those towns are just, we owe them a huge debt of gratitude.
Hey, Jeff, there was a question in chat about ZOBA.
Okay.
That's our ride that we do usually generally the last week of July, and it's a cross-state ride, Indiana to Kentucky, or Indiana to Pennsylvania, and it's a one-way ride. Marie Capehart is a part-time position. She's director of that, and she and I have had numerous conversations. The way it looks is we're trying to have ZOBA go ahead. That's a ride that we have usually 45 to 50 people. But this year there'll be, it will not be a one-way ride, because we don't want to put 40 or 50 people on a bus that we charter bringing you back to the starting line. So we're looking at it would be a circle route or a hub and spoke route, so that we didn't have to transport people back to the starting line. That one we're still planning to move ahead. It's not as complicated as a GOBA, because we have we have 5% or so of the number of riders we get on GOBA. But there'll be more information on that.
And I just wanted to add, this is Lisa Daris. Another question that may or may not be on people's minds is TOSERV. And so TOSERV is, facing the same challenges whenever you have an overnight sleeping arrangement. How does that get handled? Because that is a situation that's ripe for COVID transference. So we are looking at options like camping, and that'll just be something that we'll continue to look into for the event. TOSERV usually happens mid-May. So.
Okay. I was kind of scrolling through some of the questions that were.
Gary, Jeff, I can read some of those to
Yeah,
you.
that would help since you kind of kept up with them as they were coming in. But,
Yeah, we had several good ones. Some you have answered. I mean, I think one person asked, if June does not work, is it possible to schedule GOBA for August? And I think you've addressed that. So we'll move on to, would masks be required if you're riding?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it seems to be, for one thing, it would be kind of hard to enforce. And again, with the riding, depending on the situation, it's there's not as great a risk, of the transmission, when you're out moving, when you're in moving air, and if you're maintaining some distance and all that. I would say at minimum, it's going to be, highly suggested. And anytime that you're off the bike, if you stop at a food stop or, stop at carry out restaurant, anything like that, the state requirement and the rules on that probably are going to change, between now and June. But even if it's not a requirement, it's a real good idea. And I think a lot of us have gotten, used to using a mask and so it's, I don't want to say at this point, that we are going to mandate it or anything like that, but it's something that, as we kind of work through this process and as we see, how things are going, with the spread of the virus and the administering of the vaccine, that's something that's, on the table that, I think we may have to institute that, when you're on the bike, but I would say fairly definitely when you're off the bike.
Okay, we have another good question. Will those of us who donated last year's fee get to register ahead of the open registrations?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, my deep thanks, for those folks who donated a registration fee to Outdoor Pursuits to help us out. And yeah, they're definitely in that line, with the deferral people in terms of having priority, for registration in 2021. It's like, yeah, that's kind of the least we can do to show our gratitude to those folks, because yeah, they really helped us out when we were in a bind and just help the organization survive. So yeah, most definitely you'll have that priority ahead of any new riders.
Okay, Jeff, one more question that's a good one, and I've heard you ponder this out loud in the office. Ride the 5 boroughs in New York City has been canceled for May already. Does this ride or other state rides affect your decision for GOBA? I guess what other state rides are doing?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, in Outdoor Pursuits, we're involved like in the bicycle tour network. So it's sort of a network of a group of bicycle events from around the country and even Canada and overseas that we consult with each other and like, for instance, I have contacts with people at Bike Virginia and places where, in other words, they're almost kind of like peer events to GOBA in that, their similarities of being multi-day tours, with camping. And so yeah, very much, what they're doing, helps shape our thinking. And as far as, I mean, it doesn't, of course, dictate, what we do, but it's something we take into very strong, consideration. And yeah, with the cancellations, I think the most recent major one is the Florida Bike Safari, which had been scheduled for April 10th through 15th. And that's been postponed to 2022. And there's a tour in Minnesota that's the same week, or I think a week ahead of GOBA. They have pushed back the start of their registration, I believe, from March 1st to April 1st. So they're, taking that wait and see attitude. And things, I think, like the Boston Marathon, I think, has been a cancellation. And so, yeah, not just bike tours, but, other types of events too, where there's gatherings, and like that involved, or even things. My understanding is like the Arnold Sports Festival in Columbus, which is usually in early March. I haven't looked into it, but I was told the other day that that's being canceled. And so yeah, we're definitely monitoring all those things, and exchanging information too, with the other groups, as far as like what they're doing. With Bicycle Tourism Network, they have some pretty good sources online. The USA Cycling, has some good documents just on, and they were from June of last year. And so some of them, the science and things on mask and things like that have changed a little bit since then. But there's some good advice and guidelines there that I think a lot of tours, are looking at. So there's, some commonality, I guess, in how all of us are approaching, COVID, and how to conduct, a tour, in these circumstances. So
Excuse me,
yeah,
Jeff.
in short, we're really keeping tabs on the other tours.
Excuse me, Jeff.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, this is Jeff Scott speaking, and I'm from Canada. How many Canadian riders did you have for last year's tour?
I believe, I want to say, just off the top of my head, we probably had a good 25 or so. And I know with you guys, there's still that obstacle of not being able to cross the border. And so that's another thing. We'll kind of have to see how that plays out. But yeah, it's the
What's going to happen if you open up the ride, but we can't cross the border?
well, at the very least, there would be a deferment there to a future year of GOBA. You wouldn't have to use that token, I guess, in 2021. But yeah, I would hope that that's something, if we're still at the point where we're not allowing a border crossing, I think that probably is bodes ill for even being able to have a GOBA. If things are still that the situation's still that serious, come June, that people can't even cross the border, that probably doesn't give us a whole lot of hope, for having these mass gatherings, like GOBA. So again, that's just something that, Mhm.
Okay, Jeff, another question. Is
Mhm.
that certain amount of irrationality with Americans and Canadians in that you're refusing to take the vaccine? Are you going to be going onto your ride, and say if a rider wants to ride in a ride, but he refused the vaccine, what are you going to do then?
Yeah, that's another, and I think somebody raised that question in the chats too about, vaccines and how we approach that. And I think at this point, for a lot of us, not only GOBA, but other events and employers and, concerts and things like that, there's the real question of verification. And there are a couple of apps that are in the works, like IBM and others are developing, where it's sort of like a vaccine passport, where you can, basically, it doesn't contain any private information, but your data can be sent to a company that then issues, like I think generally like a QR code or a card, that you can show that, confirms that you've been vaccinated. And there's a lot of issues with that that still need to be resolved before we get to that point. And that includes things like the cost of doing that for people, and also just the whole mechanics of doing it. Like in Canada, that's probably a little easier in a single payer, single pay healthcare system. Whereas in the United States, we have so many health providers and so many places you can receive the vaccine. Trying to assemble, that, into a database and then generating, this QR code for everybody that, has either had COVID or has gotten the vaccine. That's going to be, a challenge, as to how that works. And so again, we're looking a lot too, at how other events are handling it and how employers even are handling it, as far as proof of vaccine in order to be able to attend an event or be able to even work, on the job. And so I would say that that's something that it's still too early, to tell you anything definitive on that. But our hope is, that a fairly easy system will be developed where, it will be easy for people to have this, QR code on their phone or a paper card in their pocket. Although the QR code is a little more secure, than having a paper card, and that, it'll just be a matter of showing that, and then, we would scan it, with a phone or, some sort of reader, and that would confirm, that you're vaccinated. But again, there's the kind of the issues too of, the availability of the vaccine and just how soon, people are going to be, that do want to take the vaccine, how soon they're going to be able to get it.
Hey, Jeff,
Yeah.
last question.
Yeah. Mhm.
Last question is that if we don't approve of what GOBA is doing, can we storm GOBA's offices like you guys did at the Capitol?
Well, I think we've got the I think we've got barriers and sandbags, everything else outside. Hard part's finding our office because we're not there much these days since we're working from home. So, but yeah, I would say.
Do I have to bring my gun?
No, I would. That's one thing I'd advise against.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim. I'm sorry, Matt. I'm not hearing you.
I think we've got most of the questions here answered that came through. The last two were, addressing a vaccine or the vaccines and a negative COVID test. And I think you've done your best to address that at this point. There was one last question about any estimate on cost. I guess that's new costs for this 2021 year. So I don't know if you want to address that, or it might be too early for that.
Yeah, it's a little bit early in the sense that we're still working through with some of our contractors, just what, what increasing cost, that they're going to pass along to us, when you have, like the shower trucks and everything requiring, stepped up sanitation and porta potties and that sort of thing. And we're going to do our best, to hold the line on cost, but I would suspect, it's going to go up, for those new registrants, it's going to go up a little bit. And we're also kind of working through things like the add-ons, for instance, like the camper services where, there are tents involved. The expense in doing that, is surely going to go up too, as we have to take extra steps, to keep those tents clean. So it's yeah, a lot of things related to cost, are still very much up in the air, and things that we'll be working through, over the next couple of months as we try to take aim at, opening up the registration for new riders, and then also opening up the purchases, for camper services and the other, add-ons. And I think, there are some things, that we've been learning already, like I know Jerry Rampelt has passed along some information about towel services and whether we want to move to something where we use like paper towels that are disposable, which are actually a lot a lot nicer, you know, than it sounds. And it's also a thing where the towels aren't being laundered, and you don't have to worry about, you know, whether they were properly laundered, because you're getting a new, you know, a new paper towel. You know, these are like large, you know, large paper towels that you use each time. So yeah, and so it's kind of a matter of seeing, you know, what the expense is if we offer something like that, and just kind of really kind of getting a little more, you know, boring in a little bit more on expenses, and just, you know, what that's going to mean as far as registration costs and add-on costs.
Yeah, Jeff, in the past couple of years, I did 2 of Bubba's rides, and they've gone to this, it's about a 6-foot long paper bath sheet. And I cannot dupe, if any of you have done a Bubba ride, Bubba is a 6'5" guy that has his own brand of humor, but his description of his paper towel as opposed to a laundered towel, you never want to touch another laundered towel that someone else has used before you. And it obviously that would be that would be a situation where then they're packaged, not packaged, they're in a roll, and you know that what you're getting is coming off and not been laundered.
Yeah, and some of that, it sounds like it could even be a cost saver for us, and that you're not having to haul loads of towels, you know, to the laundromat each day. And so, yeah, those are just things that, you know, we kind of have to work through, you know, in determining, you know, determining what we have to charge for add-ons and registration. I don't know if I'm seeing all the screen. Any more hands up there? But yeah, I want to also give kind of a shout out to the GOBA staff and volunteers. It's going to be, you know, as we work through this, it's going to be a challenge, and require a lot of patience and innovation, and just, you know, and just really kind of keeping up, you know, with the developments, and you know, as we sort of carve out, you know, a plan for GOBA that, you know, hopefully we'll be able to put in place come June, and just to determine, you know, what needs to be done to keep, you know, not only you all safe, but them as well. I mean, you know, when they're sagging you or treating you at the first aid tent, and you know, all the other encounters that, you know, we have, it's we have to keep them safe as well, and find out, you know, how they can still, you know, provide the same, you know, I think just really fantastic level of service. I mean, the service you get on GOBA for what essentially is a fairly, you know, low cost tour compared with a lot of others. I mean, I just think it's a huge value, and a lot of that value is the people who are out there, you know, that you're in contact with, who are helping you out when you're stuck alongside the road, or need to get a Band-Aid, or you know, whatever. Hopefully nothing worse, but you know, whatever comes along, they're there for you. And you know, we definitely, you know, it just wouldn't work without them, and you know, and they just do a stellar job, and they're so experienced. I mean, this will be, you know, my 3rd year as director, and but a lot of these folks, and some of the SAGs, like I see, you know, Pete and some of the others that, you know, have been doing it for years and years, and there's just that level of expertise, you know, that gets built up that is really irreplaceable, you know, especially with when things get hairy. But, so I guess we've reached 8:04, which puts us like just over an hour. So I think that was kind of our target. And so I guess we'll go ahead and adjourn. And what we'll probably do moving forward, once we get a few more details on, particularly some of the questions you all are asking about, vaccination verifications and cost and things like that, and just kind of how things are shaping up, in terms of whether we're going to be able to open up things, to registration to new riders. I think probably about March or so we need to do one of these again, and hopefully I can be a little more detailed and a little less theoretical. But yeah, it's really important to us that, we keep you guys informed, because, you've got decisions to make about, how you want to spend your summer, and what's, it all boils down to, a personal decision of, what your tolerance for risk is. And just, we've all had friends who basically kind of haven't even come out of the house, for the past 9 months, and others who have been, a little more adventurous. So it's, it's a matter of, keeping trying to make everybody comfortable, but for the more adventurous folks, they may have to sacrifice a bit of that freedom, but in order to do so, because again, we got to keep everybody safe. All right, well, have a good night, and try not to watch too much of the news. This too shall pass. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Yep. Good night from Florida.
Good night from Indiana.
Can I see the top of your dress? Yeah. It's kind of summer.